So, in celebration of National Engineers Week, welcome to At Home with Mateo Askaripour, Black Buck Book Talk. Mateo is a College of Arts and Sciences alumnus of 2012. Shout out to CAS. He was recently featured by the New York Times, and his book was selected as Jenna Bush of the Today Show's Hot Book for January 2021. Congrats on that. Black
Thank you,
Book has,
sir.
yeah, there we go. Black Book has been described as a crackling satirical debut novel about a young man given a shot at stardom as the lone black salesman at a mysterious cult-like and wildly successful startup where nothing is as it seems. The book especially resonates with people who love Sorry to Bother You and Wolf of Wall Street. You get a lot of those vibes, and it keeps you very excited. And the themes, really hit on tech startup culture, ambition, racism in the workplace, and especially in entrepreneurship. And how do you retain your identity, you know, in between all of that. As a alumni myself from NYU TANDON, or Poly as I knew it, in 2015, and a proud member of the Polytechnic Alumni Association board, and as a member of the startup community, as having been a co-founder myself, I'm happy to be hoping to be hosting this discussion today and get in a bit deeper with what it means to be the one of the one person, the individual, the outcast in these rooms, and especially in entrepreneurship. And so one thing I'll say is before we start is as questions occur to you during the session, feel free to enter them in the Q&A box on your screen. We'll get to as many of them as we can by the end, and maybe try to slip in a few of them during the talk. But as we get to it, Mateo, thank you for joining us. I know you're going to talk to some of these things during the questions, but if you could just give the audience a quick intro.
Yes, sir. Richard, or my man Rich, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. NYU Alumni Association is just so good to be virtually back with the homies, as we'd say. Rich, you really said it all, man. Yeah, I graduated from CAS in 2012. It's hard to imagine that I would be here without NYU, right? And that's not on some, let me just promote NYU type stuff. But NYU in many ways was one of the communities that made me. So it's just so good to be able to interact with people who are either at NYU now or had been at NYU, or is like my mom in the crowd who never went to NYU except for my graduation. So I'm just happy to be here, man. Yeah, I wrote Black Buck, came out January 5th, 2021. And as you listed, wonderful things have happened since the book has come out. But what has been most valuable to me is the fact that people are writing to me saying that you don't know me, but it's as if you do because you wrote about me in your book. And I saw myself reflected back in the pages. So you referred to it in a very Matrix Neo way as the one, right? But broadening it, what it means to be the only one or one of the few, black or brown or just anyone from a different type of background, whether that's due to sexual orientation, gender expression, or religion, in an environment, whether it be the workplace or some other place. So that for me is what's just been most valuable today. And I'm so excited to be here with everyone.
It's great. Thank you for that. So I guess, let's just dive right in it. You talked about, you talked about your time at CES. You talked about writing the book. Did you always know you wanted to write?
Definitely not. Nah, man. When I and I can open up a little bit more because I'm among family. But when I was at NYU, I thought that I came in basically being like, let me get this piece of paper. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, yeah, maybe I'll learn some stuff, but let me get this piece of paper that will show people whatever it means to have gone to NYU, right? That you can survive in the city when, freshman year, people are coming in and those same people are not with you because not everyone vibes with it, right? You went to a school that is rigorous, it's worldly, it is, what's the word that people like to use? Cosmopolitan. So I came in to get that paper and I thought that I'd graduate and then go to law school and then eventually get into politics. But by the end of my 4 years, and I had been fortunate enough to have basically studied abroad for a year and a half. I went to Florence, and then after Florence, for my junior year, I was one of the inaugural RAs in Abu Dhabi, setting up that campus. But by the time I came back my senior year, I was like, yo, I don't even know what it means to be, at NYU on the square. I don't have some of the same friends. I had to rebuild myself and my own social group. But by that time, I was like, yo, I actually do not care about this politics degree that I'm getting. I'm going to finish it out because I don't want to spend even, more time and more money going back or doubling back or switching majors. But while I was there, I did take one creative writing course, like an elective, rather than what we used to call MAP. You might remember MAP. I think that's what it's called, the Morse Academic Plan freshman year. And I knew that I liked writing, but I'd always liked writing. It wasn't something that I thought that I was actually gonna, pursue as a career. So I graduated and I went to a country called Tajikistan. It's the poorest former Soviet Union country in Central Asia. I got some scholarship to go there for 2 months to study Persian. And when I came back, I was like, damn, what am I doing? I was living on Long Island at my parents' house. And fortunately, good perk of NYU, I was applying to like 30 jobs a day through CareerNet, because word on the block was that you could still gain access to CareerNet for at least a year after you graduated. So I was applying to a bunch of jobs. And I was going to, be like a paralegal assistant. I was going to manage a gym. I was going to be a dog walker. I was going to be an executive assistant. But I somehow got connected with a startup. I actually think it was through Craigslist. And they were looking to teach people how to use the internet. So I went in for an interview to actually be a writer of video content. Even again, I wasn't really thinking of myself as a writer. Second interview, I roll through. And they're like, listen, man, we just hired 2 other kids, but we like you. We like your energy. You're going to intern here. And I was like, intern? What? Someone else comes in the room and was like, chill out. You got the internship. It was like some mind type stuff. And I was like, God, what? Yo, they said, we're not going to pay you. How many days you're going to come in a week? And again, I was living on Long Island at this time. So I was like, I don't know, I'll come in 2 days a week. So my parents were like, what are you doing? My friends from NYU, we're like, what are you doing? We're out here making 65, 70K. You're working for free and commuting, waking up 4 a.m. to work at this startup. The startup wouldn't even give me a Metro card. But it was where I cut my teeth, man. And it was where I was able to rise up, within a short amount of time, from an intern to a community manager to then starting the sales team. So I'll cut the startup story there, but flash forward about 4 years later, I became disillusioned with the world of sales and startups. And for me, writing was always something that I loved to do. So I began to turn to it in 2016. And I was writing articles and essays focused on startups and sales. And then I remember it was May 21st, 2016, that I was like, let me start writing fiction. And for me, I realized that writing was an outlet, but writing fiction was a very specific form of salvation for me. Because the whole time I was at the startup, again, to answer your question directly, I was like, yeah, maybe I'll write a book eventually when I'm like 60 and I would have built a company that hopefully had an impact and made money. And then I write one of these, this is how I did it type books that we've seen, from CEOs or people of the sort. So it was May and I began writing fiction. I was like, man, this is exactly what I need right now. It's a type of cliche where when people define a passion as something that you can do for hours and not know that time has passed, that's what I felt. And I left my job in August 2016, and I traveled a bit because I was just burnt out. And I said, you know what, let me figure out this writing thing. And I'll stop the story there, but there were many failures. And then eventually years later, Black Buck.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's tough. I feel you. And I'll definitely say, first of all, I vibe with the take that one creative writing course. I did the same thing. I took one in my senior year. I slipped in one advanced creative writing course, and that I had already been into that, but that definitely got the juices flowing.
Oh yeah.
And so and it's just funny how you kind of just fall into those things, because you go in thinking, I'm gonna do engineering or law school or something else, but people don't realize a lot of times that they also have this creative side that they just want to nurture and kind of do things with, and how much of an outlet it could be for you. So I definitely feel you on that. You mentioned traveling a lot. Do you feel like that had a solid impact in you writing Black Buck?
Probably in ways that I can't see. For me, traveling was always a way to get out of myself but also to get into myself, to learn more about who I am when I'm in unfamiliar environments. And it's funny because that is what's happening in Black Buck. Our protagonist Darren is going from working at a Starbucks and living in Bed-Stuy to then all of a sudden being on the 36th floor of a Midtown Manhattan building where he is the only Black employee. So I guess now that I'm speaking about it, maybe that did prepare me, because I've been in places where I've been the only Black person, where I've been the only American, where I've been the only person or one of the few who speak English. So maybe that did prepare me, and uncovered ways that I've had to rely on myself, or I've had to realize that who I am isn't the end all be all, or being from America isn't the end all be all, or speaking English isn't the end all be all, you know? But for me, traveling just, I think, helped me to become more empathetic. And I'm trying not to be corny here, but it's true. It helped me to be more empathetic, helped me to better learn and understand and be further honest with myself about what I like, what I don't like about myself, or just in general externally. And it allowed me to see more things that just broke down, I guess, any concept that I had of a standard, right? You're a creative individual. You work in one sphere, but you also started your own creative studio. So I feel like you understand what I'm saying, right? About looking to upend standards, especially, honestly, if we're keeping it real, when the standard, at least in the States, is white. It's code for that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing, another point I'll give you that I don't think you gave yourself is I feel like, you have a great use of culture in the book.
Mm-hmm.
The way you kind of talk about different cultures, that you include a lot of different cultures in the book.
Yeah.
And I feel like that, some of that comes out of, being who you are and having had, the chances to kind of get out of yourself and meet other people and speak to them and learn about their cultures that helps you be more empathetic in your writing and more inclusive.
Well, I think it's similar to you, Rich, right? Like, are you first gen?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too, right? You have a Haitian background. My mom, she's from Jamaica, so we
Yeah.
got the Caribbean things going on, you know. But having that perspective, especially being first gen, gives you an insight into what it means to be American if your parents weren't from here, what it means to be Black if your Blackness doesn't come exactly from America, right? So I think that you could relate to a lot of what's going on in the book, but also the point here is that I tried to write something that was authentic to my experience. And living in New York, unless you're in a bubble or unless you're in some like very privileged sphere where you don't have to interact with other people, you are seeing other people all the time at your bodega, on the subway. And if you can just take a breath and say, it's not about me all the time, and just understand that there's other people around you and that those other people are valuable, then I think it enriches your view, or gives you, as you said, a more cultured perspective.
Absolutely. And that just reminded me, I just wanted, before I forget, a quick shout out to a point you made in the book of, bumping into people. Like I actually did go to Bronx Science, and I can't even explain to you the amount of times I'm on the train, and like I actually bump into somebody that I went to high school with, and you get into those conversations and you have those moments. So that whole experience was just a
Wow.
massive throwback for me. So
To give the viewers context, my protagonist Darren, he graduated as valedictorian from Bronx Science, where now we know Rich is not only an alumnus of NYU, but also Bronx Science, a very prestigious public high school in the States. And Darren decides not to go to college, so he's working as a shift supervisor at Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. And yeah, there's reasons for that, but just to give a little bit of context for those who haven't read the book and are here.
So actually, that leads me to my next question. You just meant, talking about Darren, and I would even say my own personal connection to him, and I feel like maybe other people might have a similar connection, but I just felt like, Buck, as I'll call him, was such a frustratingly good, imperfect character, like someone who has to go through the mistakes. You got to watch him go through the mistakes. Some of these are mistakes that you've made in some way. And so, it really sometimes gets under your skin and gets to you and really makes you feel things. Is this the reaction you want readers to have to him, or what kind of reactions did you expect from readers to Darren?
Well, I mean, Rich, you hit the nail on the head, man. Not to use another cliche, but I wanted readers to not just feel one thing, but many things. So you saying that you're feeling so many things while watching Darren become Buck. And again, for people who haven't read the book, Darren gains a nickname when he starts working at the startup of Buck, and he really assumes this new identity. He becomes someone else. Sometimes people describe it to me as, yo, Mateo, why did Buck take on this alter ego? It's not that he took on an alter ego. He changed, as we often do. So for me, I wanted him to be someone that people could root for, especially in the beginning. So you see his amazing relationship with his mother. You see his loving relationship with his girlfriend, his fun relationship with his best friend, and the other people in his neighborhood. You know, he has Bed-Stuy and Bed-Stuy has him. So when he begins to transform into someone else, when he is in this workplace, there is a feeling of a lot of people that there's disappointment, and not at first, because sometimes you're excited. You know, you're like, my man got on. Yes. Like he went from making 19,000 at Starbucks to 65,000 almost overnight. He had to go through a lot of overt, and we can call it passive racism if we want, or dress it up and call it a microaggression. He had to go through microaggressions in order to get his, to earn his spot in ways that other people didn't on the sales team at this startup. And many of us are rooting for him. While there are other readers who have told me that they're like, if I was in Darren's position when he was being put through the ringer in this way, I would have caught a body. They're like, I wouldn't have stayed at that startup. You know, I wouldn't have put up with it. Then there's other people who say it was really tough to read that because I've been there. And this, again, doesn't just go for people being the only one related to their race in an environment. It could be the only person that's XYZ for whatever XYZ means, where you are stupefied into silence, or you are like, is this actually happening? Am I hearing this thing actually transpiring, whether it's related to race or gender expression or religion, from homies who maybe you just ate lunch with the day before, right? An example of this would be you're in the workplace or virtual workplace in June, and a colleague says something like, oh, did George Floyd have fentanyl or something in him? As if that would justify, right? And then you're like, hold up, I just ate lunch with Sharon yesterday, and I thought she was cool, but she also has this other view that isn't in line with my values and who I am, and could definitely be rooted in racism. So the point was to make readers feel many things. And for me, not to tell readers what those feelings should be, because different readers feel different things. And that is exactly what I wanted, Rich, because I believe that people could read this book, close it, and forget about a lot of what happened, but it would be harder for them to forget the feelings that they experienced.
For sure. I definitely catch on with that last line. A lot of times you remember emotions a lot more than you can remember specific lines or thoughts. Yeah. And you said a lot in there. That was a packed answer. You said a lot in there that relates and kind of digs onto a couple other questions I have. So hopefully I can kind of tie them all together, because I'm very excited. And I think before I hit some of those questions, here I'll give you a two-part question. Is how long did it take you to work on the story of Black Buck before you got it out? And I asked that because I imagine that the climate the world is in today is a bit different than when you started the book. And so how do you feel like your message and intent kind of lines up and carried over to where we are now?
Yeah, so for the first part, the first draft of Black Book took me about 5 months just for the first draft. And the first draft was a lot longer than what you see behind me. Behind me, it's around 110,000 words. The first draft was 168,000 words. Like, look up Moby Dick, and Black Buck would have came in maybe 50 or 100 pages less. So it was long. And that was a function of me not having a formal writing background. I don't have my master's in fine arts, right? I told you I took one creative writing class, but that was more for fun. That wasn't really, teaching me how to write. So I wasn't really disciplined on the page, but the pro of that is I wasn't afraid to write, and I wasn't afraid to bring energy to the page and push the envelope in that way. So it took me 5 months to write the first draft, and then I let it sit for like a month. And then it took me, maybe 2 months to edit the second draft, probably let it sit for a couple of weeks, worked on a third draft, and then started querying agents because, again, I didn't have any connections. I wasn't coming at this like, boop, let me call up some homies and say, yo, pass my stuff to your agent. It wasn't like that. I don't have those connections. So I started querying agents, and then certain things transpired, and it was February 2019 that I got an agent. So about a year later from when I began writing the book, and then we edited it together and had a couple early readers, and it was August 8th, 2019. So a handful of months later that we sold the book. So about a year and 6 to 8 months from when I began writing to when we sold it to Houghton and Mifflin Harcourt. And a crazy aside is that this book is set in 3 Park Avenue on around like 34th and Park, where I actually worked. Not only that, but my publisher is located in the same building. And I didn't even know, right? Like, I don't believe in coincidence, man. Like that was some fate type stuff right there, or whatever we want to ascribe that to, a higher power, of course, than us. So that's how long it took to write the book, multiple drafts, and even multiple drafts after we sold it. But I would rather have to work on many drafts rather than just writing super tight and second guessing myself in the process. That's not the kind of energy that I like to bring to the page. And 2, right? So I began writing this in 2018. It was the evening of January 8th, 2018. And I don't even write in the evening, but it just struck me, this author's note, which is largely unchanged. And the thing is, people ask the question that you asked, Rich, but in a somewhat of a different way, like, oh, you knew that you had this book, and then May, June 2020 happened where you're like, yeah, I got something. That's not what happened. I was broken, just from the series of events that transpired, these executions and murders, and watching that 8-minute and 46-second video of George Floyd. My mind wasn't on, damn, my book is going to sell. Like, it wasn't on that. I was like, when is this going to stop? And I'm someone that could typically just keep it moving, but it was hard for me to do it then, to be completely honest. It really got in my bones. But then, after a couple of months, I was like, okay, I'm happy that this book is coming out to let many of us who have been in these scenarios know that we are not paranoid. We are not crazy. We're not overly sensitive when we believe something is amiss in these environments. 2, while I didn't honestly have non-Black people in mind while I was reading the book, but I'm happy that they're reading it, of course, to let these other people see a reflection of themselves in the book and say, who am I? And do I like who I am? How have I been complicit in the larger narrative of our nation and our world regarding these tragedies that take place? So that's where I was at. And the last thing I'll say is that I didn't write to this moment. Right. I wrote to history, the series of moments that have gotten us to where we are now and will hopefully improve and get us to another place moving forward.
Absolutely. Because, if, to a lot of people paying attention, and especially, to us who, we can't dodge it. This isn't new. This has been the game that we've been playing for the last, centuries, really. But, it's,
Right.
For us in our lifetimes, all our life has been, this and navigating this. And it just so happens that 2020 has been a year that really has, if ever, I think started to expose things in a way that now the discussions are getting larger and they're getting bigger, and having Black Buck being one of the pieces there that's out there that can help be a guidepost for some of that discussion, I think is really great to see.
Definitely. Rich, let me ask you, man, if I may, and anyone again who has questions, drop them in the chat or drop them in the forum box. We're gonna get to them. But Rich, you started your own company, right? Clean Tech. It was funded by the Department of Energy. I guess without going too deep into it, what were some lessons that you learned? Because we both know, and maybe many people in the audience know, that beginning a company is difficult. But beginning a company and trying to get money from venture capitalists or the Department of Energy or anyone that mostly doesn't look like you is difficult. So what was your journey like, if I could ask?
You kind of summed it up in that one word. It was tough. But, one thing I'll say, or one of the things I'll say, and this was going to tie into a question I was going to ask you, is you talk in the book, you talk about opportunities, like that one moment, that one moment of opportunity and that flash, and how you basically have to be ready to take it. And that's kind of how that happened to me. You know, it was kind of like always showing up and always trying to do this, and then eventually it was just that one single opportunity was at one of NYU's incubators that, you know, a program manager, you know, shout out to Joe Silver, introduced me to you know, to the person who eventually became my partner. You know, it was just like a momentary thing, like that just happened. And the thing is, there aren't a lot of that, you know,
Yeah.
especially for us. It's like there is, and so you don't even have time to question it, to second guess it. You just kind of have to roll with it, because you don't know, you know, is this going to happen again?
Mm-hmm.
Or whatever. And so then eventually, you know, the other problem is, you know, no matter how tough it gets, you know, you're just like, I got to stick it out, because
Take it until I make it.
exactly, because you know, because I feel like this is one of the things you're trying to get to in the book, but you have this feeling of like, now I gotta do this for the whole squad. Like I have to succeed for the community, because if I don't, I wasted an opportunity that we don't get that often. And so
yeah, that's right.
that was really rough. And I would say, you know, I'll get to the question that I have on that in a second, but we got lucky in a lot of cases. You know, my partner was a really good grant writer, and he had experience there, and you know, we just happened to be hitting. You know, as you said, you know, you don't believe in coincidences. I don't either, and it just happened to be, you know, right place, right time.
Yeah.
You know, one thing would keep leading to another, would lead to another connection, would lead to another grant, and whatever have you. And I think that goes back to it. Just like a lot of times, like if I didn't have that situation, and also if I didn't have partners who were also more privileged than I was and had chances of having experience, and then, you know, didn't want to take a shot on me of because my partners are both PhDs. They were much older. You know, one was a professor at NYU TANDON. They didn't take a shot on me. You know, they could have easily have ended, you know, my career there, or at least made, you know, I might have found another way, but the trajectory has been a lot different.
Yeah.
And so we rely on people being willing to take a shot on us, and a lot of those people don't look like us, and so they could easily, you know, go with other people that you know aren't me, that aren't you.
The fragility of all of that, Rich, is just, it's so scary.
Yeah.
Right. And that comes down to the concept of opportunity that I'm also showing in the book. You know, who gets these opportunities? Is it people who have a closer proximity to whiteness, honestly, in the way that we speak, in the universities that we attend, in the ways that we're able to move? Because we see this in the book, right? Jason is just as smart. Jason is Darren's best friend from Bed-Stuy, who's posted up on the corner doing this, that, and the other. Jason is just as smart, if not smarter, than Darren. But we know Rhett wouldn't have given Jason an opportunity due to the way that he dresses and the way that he speaks. I will also say, just like in the book with Darren, where Rhett sees something in him and Darren can rise to the occasion, these people might have given you an opportunity, Rich, but you're the one who saw it through, right? You're the one who didn't fumble it. You're the one who made it happen. People can get opportunities all day, but if you can't make it happen, if you can't capitalize, then it's just, you're dead in the water, right? But going back to what you said in the beginning, we see this in the book with the character of Frodo. Frodo is basically your mediocre white guy. And he's cool for the most part, even though he doesn't realize that he has any privilege, but he's cool for the most part. Comes from a blue-collar background, played D1 tackle at Notre Dame. And him, Darren, and a woman named the Duchess, her real name isn't the Duchess, it's Claire Vanderbilt. I almost forgot her real name because we don't refer to her as that in the book. They're all sitting around eating lunch, and they say, "How did you get into this workplace?" And the Duchess said, "My dad played squash with the director of sales at the Greenwich Country Club." And Frodo, original name Arnold Bigini, says he worked with a recruiter, and this startup where they're now working was his sixth interview. And Darren he's reticent to say how he got in. Basically, he got in because he sold the CEO a different drink at Starbucks, and the CEO believed, oh, this guy has some natural sales ability, let me bring him in. But we see the difference, right, between Frodo and Darren. Frodo had 6 chances. He messed up the first 5. Darren had this one, and these people didn't even want to accept him then. And this is not hyperbolic. This is not hyperbolic, because in interviews, if you or I walk in and they hire us and it doesn't work, and they hire maybe someone else who looks like us and it doesn't work, subconsciously, these people who don't look like us might be like, not a culture fit. That's what they say, right? Anyway, I just wanted to touch on what you brought up before.
No, for sure. And there's a lot of, especially in that space, there's a lot of, you got to prove your worth.
Yes.
And, I got to tell you, I got to run through the ringer on that one. A lot of, you got to prove your worth. You got to show that you belong there. You got to show you can metal up.
Me
show
too.
You can handle the work. And a lot of other people don't have to, they don't have to do that. They kind of fall upwards.
Wow. I love that term, fall upwards.
Yeah. And for us, we just don't have that.
Nah, man. When I got into the startup world, because I'm not Darren, but I have a startup and sales background, and parts of my life are in the book. But when I was an intern, going back to the original, how we started off this conversation, I wanted to be one of the people at this startup so badly. There was like 20 of them when I was interning, and there was one other Black person, and then he eventually got fired, and then they gave me his job, which is wild. But I wanted to be down with that, man. I used to see them bringing in chopped salads, chopped, CHOPT, and those salads are like $10 to $12. And I remember being like, yo, I would love to be able to afford one of those expensive ass salads one day. And when I spoke to the CEO, he said, Mateo, I can't hire you. We can't afford to hire you right now. But if you prove yourself, if you prove that you have a motor, that you will run through brick walls to be here, then you will earn your place. And me, I was young. I was 20, 21 at the time. And I was like, I'll do whatever it takes. And I did. But then like Darren, I eventually lost my ways. But for folks who are watching right now, understand that if you read the book, it's not, despite these heavy topics, it's not 400 pages of doom and gloom or tragedy and trauma. There's a ton of humor and levity in it because, again, I wanted to write our authentic experience. And it's not like we wake up every day and we're like, shit, I'm Black. Oh, worst thing in the world. Like, that's not how it is, or at least for me. And I don't think that's how it is for you, Rich, or for many people. So whoever hasn't read the book yet, there will likely be a lot that you laugh at as well.
No,
I just hope you're laughing with us and not at us.
Definitely want to echo that, because I wake up and I actually think I love being Black.
Hell yeah.
And and we have experiences that are just different, and we bring a lot. And I'll say, people also love us being Black. It's not like people don't love interacting with us and our culture, but there's just other parts that they sometimes don't understand or can't see for themselves, or sometimes unfortunately willingly ignore. But there was the work to prove yourself piece is just that, and that doesn't just happen to us, it happens to everybody.
Yep.
And that's something that I think everyone needs to be wary of like, if you're doing the work, you should get paid to do the work. And that's it. There's no really if and buts around that. And at least what I would say, thankfully for me and during my situation was, I own part of the company, so I had another piece of fuel that was like, this is why you stick this out. You have some ownership here. This is something that a lot of people don't get to have.
Definitely not.
So this is why you come to the table, and also part of that was also learning how to then navigate that, and and talk to your partners through things, and also understand how to deal with different power dynamics.
Yeah,
that was something that were some frank discussions that I had with my partners about, like, it's not simple for me, this young Black kid, to have some of these discussions, to call people, to have to be the one calling people out on different things when they're wrong, or we should do something different or whatever, because the power dynamics are just different. And learning how to navigate that, and sure, you get better at it, but that doesn't mean it was a fun experience to go through, or it was easy, or any of that. And so that's something that people kind of have to be prepared for. But I also hope the world kind of changes to be more cognizant of of those power dynamics and how to kind of to help level the playing field and really when they bring new people in, understand the kind of effect that they have on them. And a similar question I have for you, kind of coming out of that and out of some of this discussion is, we talked about some of the pressures kind of that being in this space causes for multiple reasons. And we saw that happen a lot with Darren. How do you feel like that Black Buck is kind of maybe can be part of this larger discussion on mental health, especially within the Black community that we're having now, because it's something that we've kind of and there was a line in it
from Wally Cat.
Yeah, I saw that and I was
yeah.
Yo, that's it, and it's a big thing now.
Yeah, man. There's levels to it. There's the fact that Darren believes that he just has to man up, right? That's the male aspect of it, where he feels as though he should just man up and take it and take it and take it, everything that he's experiencing, because that's what a man does. So that's throwing into effect the question of what does it mean to be a man, aspects of toxic masculinity, what it means to hold things in, and how that can manifest negatively if you don't have an outlet or a person that you can go to. There is Wally Cat, a very funny urban corner philosopher type guy in Bed-Stuy who sits on the corner, and he's a low-key millionaire too, let's not forget. And oh, sorry, one second. And there was a beeping going on. I was like, what is that? So he is saying at one point, when he figures out that Darren's working at a place that does therapy, that's not for us. That's some rich white women shit, he says, because when we see people in movies or books depicted taking therapy, it's like a middle-aged white woman. It's not people, who look like us, when all of us need this outlet. And the third level to it is that the startup, someone, SUMWN, is selling online therapy to people as a service, when a lot of people who work at the company actually need it themselves. So I'm trying to highlight the fact that if you put profits over people, it's like a dual commentary on mental health and capitalism. If you put profits over people, and instead of, as you said earlier, Rich, looking to level the playing field, you'd rather be predatory and say, let me get as much productivity as I can out of this employee, not a person, an employee, because that strips someone of their humanity a little bit, makes it more like a cog in the machine. Then you don't have to see them as a person, and you don't have to consider their mental health. And you sort of train or gaslight people to think that their mental health is secondary to making money for the company or the company's mission. So those were just a few points that I wanted to highlight in terms of Darren's narrative and Darren's descent, and then also his rise again, or his story of redemption, when he says, you know what, I have to get back to the better parts of myself and try to work to become an even better person than I was yesterday. And part of that comes with facing who I am and accepting it and being able to talk about that with other people rather than just like bottling it in to get ahead.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely I'm happy that I was definitely picking up what you were putting down in the book.
Yeah,
because you said all the things. I'm like, that was that's exactly what I was getting. So you're right on with that. And I think another thing you kind of just said there, and you just tagged on with the the redemption of Darren, and something I really like about the story that you put together is you continually redefine the definition of success.
yeah.
And I think that's really important for people, not just trying to break into entrepreneurship, but just breaking into anything. And so I was going to ask you if you could talk about that, in relation to that freedom that kind of Buck had at the end.
Yeah. So from a writing standpoint, I skimmed through a couple questions in the Q&A, and there's a lot about writing. So it seems like people in here want to know a little bit about the craft. I didn't really know what Darren's main goal was, right? I knew that he wanted to prove himself to the people at this company, that he could do what they did better than what they did. I knew he wanted to make his mother proud, but it was through writing the book that it became clearer to me that all of this came from Darren's internal desire to be free, to be truly free. And that was just revealed to me towards the end of the book. And that was a byproduct of me allowing Darren to speak to me and moving myself as Mateo, the author, out of the way. But in terms of success, we see Darren, going back a little bit to you, Rich, right, in Bronx Science, we see Darren as having graduated as the valedictorian from Bronx Science. And then he's working as a shift supervisor at Starbucks. And many people write to me and they're like, I don't get it. Why was he doing that? Why was he wasting his potential? Well, there's reasons to it. He wanted to stay home with his mother. He thought that going to college, even college in the city, would take him further away from home, and his mother needed him. He was raised in a single parent household because his father passed when he was younger. And going to Starbucks for certain hours every day allows him just to go back home and be with his mother and be with his girlfriend and be with his friends in a way that college would change him. So in that way, Darren is successful. People look up to him. The people at Starbucks love him. He has a well-oiled machine. He's not making a ton of money, but he's making enough. Him and his mother own their brownstone, right? I really didn't want to just have this story about poor little black kid. You know, him and his mother, they're not rich, but they're not poor. They're like lower middle class sort of, or like, you know, they're scraping by, but not in a way where like, oh, they're destitute. So his life is good, but it's when he is presented the question of what are you doing? You should be doing more. You should be chasing the American dream and succeeding in this way that so many of us in America believe people need to succeed in order to be viewed as positive and strong and powerful, right? What does that mean? Having status, having the title, having money, having the accoutrements, whatever, right? And this is me as someone who's rocking a gold chain because I like it, you know? So when Darren is presented with this idea or concept of you need to chase this type of success, he loses himself in the pursuit of it, as some of us, maybe I shouldn't say many, but as some of us do, because there's a cost to success, and some of us have to pay a higher value than others. Yeah, definitely. And that transition is probably will be one of my last questions before we also pick up some of these, we have some good questions in the chat, but talking about the burns of entrepreneurship, we talked about how it affects us individually, but it also, and what's often left out is the effect it has on the people close to you, and it's something you show that a lot with Buck's relationships. I can also echo that from my own personal experiences. There are a lot of people that that really put out for me, to get to work and, to get anywhere. A lot of people that also made sacrifices that, that dealt with long hours and 24 hours a day. Like I got dropped out on and flake on anything because of something. A lot of people, all these people have to be thanked. It's like the Oscars. All these people have to be thanked, because they just get just as much of a burden effect out of this as you do. And how do you feel about the way you conveyed that in the book? Well, yeah, man. The idea of the self-made woman, man, or other identifying person is a myth. None of us do it alone. And when you're talking about a long list of people to thank, if anyone wants to see my list, just go to the acknowledgement section. That's like a small book on its own. My publisher never said cut it down. It's long. I'm thanking dozens, if not 100 people who helped me along this journey in some way or another. But none of us do it alone, man. And that's why, for me, I define success differently, right? I don't even know if we mentioned, right? Black Buck was a New York Times bestseller. That's cool. I wanted to hit that, but that's not my barometer of success. My barometer of success is how many people can I impact with this book, and how many people can I help be successful in whatever way they define it, because there's no one single narrative for it, So those were some of my thoughts on Darren's journey on the concept of success in general, and how I define it today.
And I'm gonna tie straight into a Q&A question. I'm just gonna go with the flow here.
Let's get it.
You but talking about this long list of people to thank, and I feel like this is going to be part of the answer, which is why I'm linking this question is someone asks, do you have any advice for those who who are trying to get published?
Yeah. How much time do we have? I have so many thoughts on it. One is, do not write to the industry. When I came into this game of publishing, I was trying to be cool with the who's who. I was on Twitter, I was on social media, trying to interact with all these different people. Unnecessary. It's cool if you could find people, find a community of some sort, but that's not your purpose. Your purpose is to write. Two is, if you do not pander to the industry, if you are not looking to write to a trend, then you can write something truly original. Based on your perspective and your own voice. For me, I had to write 2 manuscripts. I wrote 2 manuscripts that didn't go anywhere. I tried getting an agent. I tried getting a book deal with them. And it was after I wrote those 2 manuscripts and nothing happened, that I was like, what am I doing? And I reached what I call F it mode, where I said, you know what? Do I want to get an agent? Yes. Do I want to get a book deal? Yes. But priority number 1 is now to write something that is true to me, true to the people I want to serve, and true to the reality of the world that we live in. And in that sense, reaching that, what I call creative rock bottom, gave me freedom. And I said, I'm going to write the book that I want for the people I want to read it in the way that I want to write it. And that's how I was able to write this book, Black Buck, without having all these other people in my head. So I'd say, write the book that you want in the way that you want it to. Make sure it's connected to your purpose, and think deeply about why you're writing your book and who you're writing it for. And then when you get out the first draft, which I think that you should write it as quickly as possible. I think that you should write your first draft as quickly as possible. Write it with your heart, edit it with your mind. That doesn't come from me. That's a line from Finding Forrester, the film. If you haven't watched that, watch that. After you've written it and then you've edited it a few times, maybe you've showed it to 2 or 3 people that whose artistic sensibilities you trust, and who you really believe will be honest with you. You edit it some more. Make sure that if you're going to query agents in the same way that I did, which means basically going through the slush pile, that you really hone that list of agents, that you're not casting a wide net. You're doing your research. And there's so many different places to research. Publishers Marketplace, hashtag MSWL on Twitter for manuscript wishlist, manuscriptwishlist.org or .com. I don't exactly remember. Query Tracker. There's so many different places. But you need to find agents who actually want to read this type of work and hopefully have a track record of selling work like this. So we could go on this tip for hours, but those are just a couple thoughts that I have for you. Thank you for the question.
That's definitely great. And I'll even say, especially for people that are in the audience that might be looking at entrepreneurship and things like that, the same things goes for investors, VCs, all of that is looking around and making sure that these are the people that have an interest in investing in the type of company that you're creating.
Yep.
You don't just go after anybody. You gotta do your research ahead of time. You gotta do the grind and find out, does this person care about what I'm doing? If not, don't waste your time on it. Because just as their time is precious, so is yours. So you don't want to waste your time going after people who aren't even going to give you a light of day anyway.
That comes down to know your worth.
Yeah.
Right? For me, everything changed when an older writer said, Mateo, an agent would be lucky to have your work. When I was coming on some please, please, please type thing, that had to re-engineer my mind. So thank you for saying that, Rich.
Absolutely. And another question is what stimulates your creative writing the most, and when are you the most creative?
Well, when I write, like when I actually sit down to write is different than when am I most creative. I try to be in a creative space as often as possible, at least every day. And part of this comes from meditation. When I meditate in the morning, that is me putting a stake in the ground and me having a discussion with myself about a handful of things. One of those things being creativity. I ask myself, how creative was I from a scale of 1 to 10 yesterday? And I got to be honest. Sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 7.5. And I try not to be arbitrary. I say, why? What did I do yesterday that was creative? What did I actually create? So that keeps me in check a little bit and keeps creativity at the forefront of my mind. But I also try to be creative in all things that I'm doing. I'm trying to be creative right now in my answers to you. right? I'm looking at this event as very serious because you all are giving me your time and attention, which you can never get back. So a form of, or a way for me to respect and reciprocate that is by giving you creative answers that actually resonate rather than just like something that I said a week ago to someone else, you know? So I try to be creative in emails. I try to be creative in one-on-one interactions. I try to be thoughtful and attentive. And that trains me to be creative, or at least thoughtful and intentional when it comes to writing. I just try to make creativity part and parcel of my DNA rather it being separate from me. Another, when it comes down to my writing routine, is I tell myself the night before that I'm going to write the next day. So that the next day, there's no hemming and hawing. There's like, oh, am I actually going to write? No, I'm going to write in the same way I'm going to take a shower, in the same way I'm going to eat breakfast, in the same way I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And the last thing I'll say, it's hard to just narrow things down to 2 or 3 points, because behind all these answers are longer answers. But the thing that helps me most in being and staying creative is that I don't judge myself. I don't judge my ideas. I use the Evernote app on my iPhone. I feel like I just gave 2 free points of advertising to Apple in this Evernote app. But I use this app where, and you can have multiple folders. If I have an idea, I jot it down. And I don't say that's a stupid idea, that's a great idea. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that idea might have been good, or I don't know about this idea, but I try not to judge them. And if more ideas under that larger idea come, I jot down more notes. And if I'm still excited about the idea in a week or a month or a couple months, then I know that this is good for a novel. This is good for an essay, or this is good to pursue as a creative project. So I try not to judge myself in the moment. I try to be free and then use my mind later.
Nah, you see, I follow you on the not judging the ideas, but the not judging yourself. That's something I gotta get a little bit more used to. And I think a lot of people probably also, have that struggle of really, not judging themselves, in the work that they're doing, and kind of giving themselves that leniency. And
well, at the same time, Rich, just to interject, at the same time, you got to be balanced. You can't be like, damn, everything that I come up with is going to be money. Woo, it's going to be great. I'm the greatest, right? Yep. You can't have that. There's a level of equanimity, a balanced hand. This makes me think of Wildcat, a part in the book, but a balanced hand and a balanced mind, and trying to come as objectively as you can to ideas. And then when you're executing the ideas, bringing as much of yourself and energy to it. But yeah, my bad, man. I just wanted to jump in with that real quick.
No, for sure. And what I was going to jump into from that is, talking about being creative, a lot of times, being creative means breaking, the status quo.
Yes.
And, one of the questions that we got is what advice can, first gen, especially, first gen Black and brown people, but, also people in general, but how, to effectively disrupt the status quo while preserving their joy. When do you lean in and when do you cut and run? And this is going to lead into a question I also have for you of how our relationship with this concept of enduring and taking it is changing. And, and the example they gave is, is Bon Appetit and now Gimlet Media and there are plenty of examples of people getting sacrificed, on the altar of status quo, as they put it. So how do you navigate that? We don't want to endure and take it anymore, but how do you move forward?
Thank you for the question. That's a great one, and I'm just going to let you know right now, I'm not going to be able to answer it sufficiently in a couple of minutes. Like, I'm not going to try and say this is the silver bullet, this is how you do it. That would be ridiculous and arrogant of me. But what I will say, a few things is, one, knowing that because of who we are. And this just does not apply to first generation. It's really anyone, regardless of your background. Knowing who you are and embracing what makes you different is your superpower. And that will lead to originality. That will lead to, I can't guarantee it, but it might help you attain success in some ways. It also might work against you. If you just own your whole self, you own your whole self so fully, and some people aren't vibing with it. But at the end of the day, at least you'll know that you'll be authentic. But bringing your whole self to some of these industries, I believe, will help you get ahead. eventually. Even if at first people don't like it and they want to beat you down, then maybe you do have to cut and run, leaning into the second part of the question. At the end of the day, we don't have to take it anymore. We do not have to take it anymore. If you are talented, you have leverage. But that's also not to say you just jump in. Let's use a startup, for example, or a new job. That's not to say that you get into a new job and then after a month you say, let me quit. I think that if you were excited about that new job, you have to give it the benefit of the doubt. But how long you give it the benefit of the doubt is up to you. I can't tell you staying for 3 months. I can't tell you staying for 6 months. I know a lot of people say, let me just stay in for a year because it'll look bad on my resume if I cut out. I don't fully agree with that. Maybe on the face, but it's all about how you spin it in the story that you tell in your next interview for your next job. But where we are in this world today, and it's hard to generalize because we're all coming into this with different socioeconomic statuses, different privileges, right? You and I are both men. We have privileges that other people don't. And we can somehow chart our own paths in ways that other people have a more difficult time as a function of who they are. Like, let's just recognize that privilege, right? And it's easy for me to sit here and say what I'm saying. So please understand that there's nuance to everything. But a lot of us today don't have to just take it, or don't have to take it for a long time. Or if we do take it, then hopefully it's just a means to an end of getting to a better place. There's also, on the flip side, the thought that let me take this, let me redefine this place, let me actually change it from the inside out so that other people who look like me or share my values or characteristics in one way or another, even if they don't look like me, can have a better time in this same type of environment, right? That's the definition of a pioneer, someone who opens the door and then leaves it open rather than letting it close behind them. I heard Malcolm Gladwell say that once and I liked it. So yeah, man, there's no one cookie cutter answer, but that's what comes to mind right now.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear you on that. And I think and the biggest thing, of course, that you said is it really comes down to, to who you know yourself. You know what you can do, your best modes of communication. If you know you're not the person to get confrontational and, and it's bad for your health to get into situations, then you gotta cut loose and move on, and don't necessarily take it upon yourself to be the pioneer if you know that's not you. But if you know you've got that fire energy, if you know you're ready, to throw hands, as some like to say, then you go straight in and you do that. But I think the biggest thing you said is really, you gotta know yourself and be honest with yourself and say, can I do this? Can I handle this right now? Is this good for my mental health? Is this going to tax me in the wrong ways or in the right ways? And kind of and move off of that. And there's some other good questions, and maybe you can answer these in the chat, or you can send out an email.
I'm just going to drop my email for everyone in the chat, and also my my IG. Just feel free to reach out to me, and I will eventually answer you.
But one last question, maybe to tie it up, is what's on your must-read list that you think that inspires you, or that could inspire other people in the audience?
There's so much. From a craft perspective, On Writing by Stephen King. A book that helped me a lot was Plot and Structure by a man named James Scott Bell. And this was because an agent gave me feedback and said, Mateo, your writing, and this was with one of my first manuscripts, your writing needs more plot and structure. So I simply went to Amazon and I typed in plot and structure, and this book came up. It had good reviews and it helped immensely. Other books to just read that I love, The Street by Ann Petrie. Man, it's just so hard. Heads of the Colored People by Nafisa Thompson Spires, The Sellout by Paul Beatty, Portnoy's Complaint by Philip Roth. The list, just Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. We could go on this forever. I'm just going to hit on those. If He Hollers, Let Him Go by Chester Himes. You see, I can't stop myself, so I need to stop myself right now. I know that we're running over time.
All right, we'll cut it right there.
Yeah.
No, that was great. Thank you so much for a lot of your answers. I know there's some more questions in the chat. I know personally I have some of my own questions. So, I'll probably be hitting him up too.
Please
So
do, bro.
everyone feel free. Definitely he put his email in the chat. Don't be a stranger. Ask him your questions, reach out to him. This
Rich,
is
thank you so much, man. Thank you for your perspective. Thank you for being here with me. This was great, man. Thank you, and thank NYU for hosting.
absolutely, yes. Thank NYU. And with that, thanks. I'll pass it over to Valerie.
Thank you. Thank you both. Hi, everybody. This is Valerie Cabral, Director of Alumni Relations at TANDON School of Engineering. I want to wish all of us a happy Engineers Week, which happens to be during Black History Month. So we got a twofer today. Thank you all for being with us and for joining us for today's program. We are thrilled that we've had the opportunity to bring this very lively and dynamic conversation with Mateo and Richard to you today. What can we say? This was amazing. If you are interested in more programs like this, do check our weekly events newsletter that comes in your inbox every Monday morning. I think you might have even gotten one this morning. Please watch for our Tandon School of Engineering events invites that also come on a regular basis. And please visit our main NYU alumni events page for more upcoming opportunities. Again, thank you for joining us today. You started your week with us. We hope that you and your family, your loved ones, have healthy, safe times ahead. Go out and get the book. It's definitely a page turner. Mateo, thank you for coming back today on this snowy day to really give us a nice dose of positivity that lets us know that there are better times ahead. And thank you for sharing your talent. Have a good one, everyone.